Hey guys, Joe the Auto Guy here today. Today we're doing a water pump on this 99 Yukon. This is going to be the same procedure from 99 all the way up to 2013 or 14. I'll have the exacts in the description below. Only difference is the 99 to 03 you'll have the clutch fan. Clutch fan was all the way up to 2007, but 2004 and up was kind of a hit or miss whether you had electric fans or clutch fans. So you'll need a clutch fan tool to do this job. So now I'm going to go through a list of tools on what you'll need to do this repair. Okay, for tools, pretty much really basic. Except you need a ratchet, a 15mm socket, a 8mm socket and extension, and a 10mm socket. Deep well I think is preferred, but you can use a shallow too. You also need a body trim removal tool. Some type of hose clamp pliers. I like the kind with the cable so you can get around any angle that you need to. There's 4 hoses we're going to take off the water pump. Air tools make it fast. And for the vehicles with the clutch fan, you will need some kind of clutch fan removal tool. This is a pneumatic one to be used with an air hammer. They do sell manual ones, and what you do for that is if you had to do it by hand, you would take a 15mm ratchet and hold the tensioner tight on the belt, and then usually have a helper, but you hit the wrench with a hammer on the clutch fan, it should come loose. But they're going to be very stubborn. That's why I like the pneumatic style. Makes it quick and easy, and that's all you have to do. So that's pretty much all the tools you need to do the job. Plus obviously you need coolant and a drain pan to catch the old coolant that's going to drip down from the hoses and stuff. So let's get started. Okay, so first thing we do is to take off this intake. What you're going to do is squeeze this clip on the side facing the driver's side for this connector to the mass airflow sensor. Disconnect that and set it aside. You have a couple 8mm clamps to take these off, and there's one Christmas tree holding tool that holds this pipe to the intake right through that hole there. So we're just going to remove the intake real quick. Make sure it goes that way. Just pull back and up on the intake at the engine side. And it should pop up. Pop it off the air box and pull the whole thing and set it aside somewhere safe. Okay, next thing is we're going to be basically, we need to get this upper shroud off the fan. There's a couple 10mm bolts holding in right here and some body clips down below, so you'll need the body clip pliers and a 10mm socket to remove these. So there's just a couple body clip push pins. You just need to pry up on them and remove them. So there's 2 on the other side here. Okay, once you have those body clips removed, just remove the hose hold downs. Just one holding the upper radiator hose to it right here. Just pop that loose and then you can move the hose forward. And lift the shroud out of the way. And you can see here, right on the edge here, is where those clips are located. So you got one towards the clutch fan, one towards the radiator. So now, the next step is to be removing your clutch fan. This piece right here, there's a big 36mm hex on the back side. So now if you don't have a pneumatic fan clutch tool, you'll have a big 36mm wrench to put here, and you want to loosen it just like you would. It's right hand threads, just like you would any other bolt. But if you can't do that, what you have to do is put a 15mm socket on the tensioner and force it not on the loosened side, but actually make the belt tighter and then try to loosen it up that way. So you can see that just loosened it right up. Now all we have to do is spin the clutch fan off. Make sure you hang on to that so you don't break any of this plastic fins. So now with the clutch fan removed, we can go ahead and remove the belt. Drive belt can be removed. Drive belt can be removed by just going towards the driver's side, taking the tension off the belt, moving it off the smooth pulley, and let the tensioner go slowly. And just remove the belt off all the pulleys. And if we're using the belt, make sure it stays somewhere clean and dry. Now it's your choice at this point if you want to remove the lower shroud for the clutch fan. I'm doing it just to get a better view as for the video. But after you get the upper one off, this just comes right off. Okay, so now the next part is we're going to get a drain pan underneath, and I'm going to start removing the hoses. Okay, so the first hose, you can drain the radiator, but you're going to flow all the coolant out a lot faster if you just undo it from the water pump. Just make sure you're going to make a little bit of a mess. Make sure you get it all gathered up. So if you go down here, this is the lower water hose to the thermostat housing. We're just going to get that clamp up. Like clamp is removed. And now to remove a hose, don't just pull straight out on it. Try to turn it and twist it if it's not coming off right away. You can use a channel lux pliers to grab around the hose. Grab right at the tip and twist it loose. And that should free you up enough to take it off. Okay, the next part we're going to do is, you don't have to do this right now, but I'm going to remove the thermostat housing so that way the thermostat's blocking coolant coming out of the water pump. Majority of the coolant's going to come out now instead of when you remove the water pump. So we're going to go ahead and remove the thermostat housing. 2 10mm bolts, one down here, one up here. Okay, so now we're going to go after the 2 heater hoses that attach to the water pump. Move these clamps back. So once you get the clamps moved back in the hoses, we can remove them. And this is where one of these types of pliers, hose clamp pliers, can open up and go around this hose to grab it and loosen it up. And you should be able to pull it off. Okay, and just set those aside if you can. This one's got rear heat, so they're a little more stiff. So now we're just going to remove the upper hose now that the lower ones are disconnected, so you shouldn't have too much coolant loss coming out of the upper one. that clamp removed. Just slide it back. Take a separate corner for a second. Okay, so this is the new water pump. I'm using this to show you the mounting bolts for the water pump. There's going to be 3 10mm bolts on each side. Your tensioner is going to bolt in right here, which is on the vehicle. You don't have to remove that immediately, but you have to transfer it to this water pump. But the main ones that actually connect the water pump to it are these 3 here, and these 3 on this side. These are your sealing surfaces here. So you don't need to worry about the tensioner right this second. We're just going after these mounting bolts. So we're going to do that right now. Okay, so now that the water pump is removed, you got to make sure that your gasket sealing surfaces are nice and cleaned up. You use a small razor blade, you can use a wire brush, Scotch-Brite sandpaper. You're just going to, basically razor blade gets all the big stuff off right away. You can see how much is on the razor blade right there. We've already been scraping for a little while off camera, but you just want to make sure these are nice and flat and even. No excessive corrosion on any spot around the holes so that the new gasket will seal against it. Once you feel it all kind of nice and flat, I'm just using a sponge with a green scrubby on it. Just kind of smooth it up. Just make sure you're doing your other one over here too, underneath the alternator bracket. Got one there. We've already been working on that one. So we're going to dry them up real quick with some brake clean. Just use a rag and wipe your surfaces clean. Okay, now what you want to do at this point is, because you spilled coolant and I didn't remove the AC belt, so there is coolant and stuff. You just want to rinse this off with some water real quick. Make sure that all that coolant drains down into your pan, because it won't actually evaporate. It'll have to burn off, so we're just going to put some water down there real quick. Okay, so just take some water, rinse all that off. Okay, so now you can either just transfer over your thermostat housing to this pump, but we're choosing to replace it. We're choosing to replace the thermostat. So this is the gasket on your thermostat. It has a little notch. You look at your housing, goes in there, and then this one is supplied with a new housing. Get rid of any corroded one you may have. And this will guaranteed fit onto the new pump. So put your 2 10mm bolts, and the gasket is, like I said, the actual thermostat. So yours may need a rubber or paper gasket to the side, but this housing uses the thermostat having its own gasket supplied. We'll snug these down. Make sure that's tight. Okay, and now what we're going to do is slide the bolts for the water pump through their holes. Now what you're going to see is on the back side, now you have kind of a holding rig for your new gaskets, so that you can put these on. Make sure you're lining up the ports correctly. Okay, and this makes it so that when you're holding the whole pump, you can put it in, hold the bolts, press it forward, and that way you don't drop your gaskets off as you're trying to put the bolts in. I guess. Kind of grab the bolts, make sure your gaskets are still in place. Start pressing them forward. I'm going to kind of hold the pump, start threading each bolt one by one. You start getting some threaded in, the pump will start holding itself a little bit. Just make sure they're all started. And then all we're going to do, we have to torque these bolts in a specific pattern. So right now all we're going to do is run them in slowly and just until they touch. So we're going to tighten the bolts in 2 stages. The first pass, you do all 6 bolts at 11 foot-pounds. The second stage is the second pass, you do it at 22 foot-pounds. Hit it in that order, otherwise you risk binding and breaking one of the bolts against the pump. So this is the 11 foot-pound pass. And do the center. Center on the other side. Lower on the left side. Upper on the left side. Upper on the right side, lower on the right side. So then we're going to go for our second stage at 22 pounds. Center left, center right, lower left, upper left, upper right, lower right. And the pump is actually mounted on. Now we're going to start working on getting the lower hoses connected. Then we're going to take the tensioner off the old pump to put it on the new pump. So I choose to put the lower hoses on without the tensioner in your way when you're reassembling it, just because it gives you more hand movement right here. Then we're going to get these clamps on. Make sure your hoses didn't go too far. And then after you release the clamp in each hose, make sure it still has full torsion. After you release the clamp, make sure it still has sufficient tension on the hose so it's not going to pop off. This one, make sure they are pushed down all the way. You can see I actually have the clamp a little too far forward, so we'll let the hose go on all the way. So we're going to squeeze the clamp, force the rest of the way on, and then start moving our clamp forward. And this is probably the most stubborn one out of them all because you have the housing in your way. And you can replace these with screw type hose clamps if need be. Okay, so now we're going to put the lower hose on, and because our hose clamp snapped, we're replacing it with a screw type. Force that on, and then tighten her down. And don't get it too tight, you don't want to crush the hose, you're just trying to make sure she's not going anywhere. That one's installed. So now we're going to be removing the tensioner bolts and place this tensioner onto the new pump. 15 mil socket is needed for these. And you will note that you have two long ones that go to the back and a short one for the front, so don't mix these ones up. Here, our new water pump. Make sure they're threading in nice and easy. Okay, at this point we're going to be putting the belt back on. So again, work your tensioner to loosen it up. Right hand thread, you're just going to go that way, righty-tighty, and it'll release tension from the tensioner. Okay, fine. If you have a new belt, they're going to be kind of tough, but we're using the old one. Just stretch it out so that the flat side is on the outside, ribs are on your fingertips. Okay, so I start on the tensioner, go down around the crank pulley, up and around the water pump, and it's okay if it flops off a few times. You're just trying to get it mostly in the direction. But you're going to go around the water pump, around the power steering pump, and on the alternator. So you can see how that kind of wanted to flop on me. New belt will usually fight you. You want to slide it away from the smooth pulley for now and go around the water pump or the power steering pump. Make sure you're seated on the crank all the way. Make sure your belt's not caught on a hose clamp. Okay, you take your tensioner, put it all the way in, and slowly slide it on the pulley. Make sure you're seated everywhere. Release tension. The tensioner should take effect. Make sure you're on all your ribs. Make sure you're not going to fall off the water pump. It's on the crank pulley all the way. You don't want this off-center or anything, because when you start it, it could flop off and destroy the belt. So you just want to make sure you're all nice and seated. Which we are. If you removed your lower shroud, now is the time to put it back in. Just kind of falls into a pocket. You'll kind of know when you're in the right spot, it'll stay there. And now before I put the upper hose, because you have all this room, I'm actually going to put the clutch fan on right now. Clutch fan, for a better view of it, you just have a big hex nut here with threads. And you're just going to easily grab the center of it, start threading it on, make sure it's going to actually go on nicely. If you're crooked at all, it won't start. It can be a little awkward, but once you get it, it just falls right on. Go till it stops. It up real quick. Make sure she's tight. She's not going anywhere. Okay, now we're just gonna put the upper shroud back in place. And there's kind of two stakes it falls into. Onto the lower one, so you know you're in the right spot. Put your two 10mm bolts back in here. Put your clips back in. Okay, and now is the time to put your upper hose back in place. We're going to slide that on. Make sure your hose is seated. And reconnect this hose to it. And onto the shroud. And now we just need to put our intake back on. So you're gonna get it onto your airbox side first so that it doesn't fall down on you. And then slide it down while kind of tilting it forward, and it should pop on the lower part. Make sure you didn't fold it over. It's actually on the throttle body, and you just need to tighten your clamps down. Reattach your MAP sensor connector. Hose clamp here goes back into the intake. And this keeps it from vibrating against the shroud. Okay, so now that we have the water pump all installed, the last step is to fill it with antifreeze and bleed the cooling system properly. If you do not bleed the cooling system properly, there will be an air pocket and cause the vehicle to overheat rapidly. So we're gonna go through the steps how to do this correctly and make sure that you're all good to go. So the first step is remove the coolant cap to the reservoir. There is a fill line in the middle. You'll probably be pouring a little bit into it before it gets to that level. If it starts to fill up, give it a second. It'll go down until it's at that level before we start the vehicle. Do a quick visual inspection just to make sure you don't have any catastrophic leaks that you forgot to tighten down or anything. Looks like we have none. Coolant level is staying to rate about an inch above the fill line, so that means we're good to go ahead and start it. Make sure you have some coolant standing by, because this will drop down, so you gotta make sure you're at the proper level. For right now, engine is cold. We're gonna be starting it with the coolant cap off. Once you do that, start the vehicle, turn your heat all the way to high, blower high, and rev the vehicle to, after 10 seconds of it idling, rev it to 2500 RPM for 30 seconds. And then let off, return to idle, check the coolant level, fill up to that fill line, and then make sure you have heat coming out of your vents. Keep repeating that process till you have heat coming out of your vents. If the coolant starts to boil over, shut it down, wait for it to cool off, start this process again. Usually if you do it this way, that will not happen, but that's just a precautionary thing to do. So right now, coolant level is at there. We're gonna start it and start bleeding the system. So now we're in the vehicle, we're gonna start it. Let it maintain idle. Turn the heat knob all the way hot and your blower motor on high. You're gonna feel your vents. I usually put it on facing you just so you can feel the heat. You're gonna feel cool air coming out because there's air pockets in the heater core. So once you feel heat coming out of here, you know you're kind of good and the system's bled. That's a telltale sign. If you don't have heat, you have an issue. It could be an HVAC system issue, but if everything else worked before you did this, just make sure you have heat. So now we're gonna rev it to 2500 RPM for 30 seconds. And you can already start to feel that there's heat coming through the vents. So Now we're gonna let it idle down and check the coolant level. Suck the reservoir dry almost all the way to the bottom, so we're gonna top it off. Need a little bit more. Now that we topped it off, the second time we're going to run it for 30 seconds again, check the coolant level and see where we're at again. And I can already tell that we have good heat, so I think we're pretty okay with leaving it at this point, but I'm still going to do the 30 seconds again. And we're gonna go out and check the coolant level. You see the coolant level did not drop, it actually rose. So now all we need to do is put the cap back on, make sure that's tight. And your cooling system is bled properly. Job is complete, you're good to go. Alright, and so with the cooling system properly bled, water pump job is complete. You might notice a little bit of steam coming off the engine from any coolant that dripped in some place that's just getting heat up and steamed off. Perfectly normal, just make sure it doesn't continue to happen. Make sure your coolant temperature stays nominal, and you're good to go. Job is complete. Thanks for watching, hope this video helped you, and subscribe for a lot more videos like this one.